Oregonians are paying more for electricity than ever before. And here's the part nobody in Salem wants to say out loud. The price hikes aren't over. They've barely begun. Not because of inflation, not because of market forces, but because of policies our legislature passed. If nothing changes, Oregon families are on track to see electricity increase exponentially, perhaps 3 to 4 times by some estimates over the next decade. That means over $500 billion in cost and serious economic damage to our state. Like the gas tax, electricity prices hit every corner of life. Heating, cooling, water, groceries, rent, manufacturing, trucking, refrigeration, everything. When electricity goes up, the cost of living explodes. Here are the key facts Salem did not tell Oregonians about House Bill 2021, our net zero electricity law. First, the bill didn't just set targets. It banned the construction of new natural gas plants, the very plants that keep our grid stable during cold snaps, heat waves, smoke events, and peak demand. Second, the bill allows utilities to buy renewable credits from out of state at any price, and ratepayers are responsible for every penny. There is no cap. Third, Oregon included no affordability protections, no safety valve, no rate cap, no guardrails. Fourth, Oregon already had one of the cleanest grids in the country because of hydropower, but lawmakers forced a massive overhaul anyway. Fifth, Oregon's own utilities warned lawmakers the mandate was not achievable with current technology, transmission, or storage. Sixth, the steepest part of the mandate hits between 2035 and 2040, when we must, by law, eliminate the hardest 10 to 20% of emissions, the part that keeps the system stable. These aren't opinions. These are the realities Oregonians were never told. And with that context, here's what net zero actually requires. In 2021, lawmakers approved House Bill 2021, Oregon's net zero electricity mandate. It requires utilities to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, meaning replacing dependable power with wind, solar, and batteries, long before the technology exists to support it. The bill was championed by several legislators, including Chief Sponsor Representative Confom, Pam Marsh, and former legislator and now Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, and once legislator, now our governor, Governor Tina Kotek. Most Oregonians didn't know that this net zero law passed, and almost no one understood what it would do to cost and reliability. Regularly, people send screenshots to me of their bills at PDX Real. They want to know, is this normal? Did something change? Why is my electricity so high? It keeps going up. Here's the truth. Nothing changed for them. Everything changed in Salem. So to understand why bills keep rising, we spoke with energy experts and with Oregon politicians who supported House Bill 2021, including one of Europe's leading experts on net zero. Not everyone we asked agreed to speak with us. Representative Confom declined an interview despite being one of Oregon's most visible climate advocates, with past work at Opal Environmental Justice Oregon and current employment in the City of Portland's Planning and Sustainability Office, which oversees major climate justice funding. Her office offered to answer questions in writing, and they sent us Oregon Treasury's Net Zero Investment Plan, a document aligning Oregon's pension funds with UN-affiliated climate finance frameworks. It's an example of how net zero is being embedded into Oregon's financial systems quietly, through financial management, not public debate. But others did come forward, and what they shared paints a very different picture than what Oregonians were told. We begin with engineering and not politics, because no matter how good a policy sounds, the grid has to follow physics. Wind and solar are weather dependent, but the grid has to produce electricity every second, day or night, in every condition. Catherine Porter is one of the world's foremost experts on grid reliability. She advises governments and utilities across Europe and the U.S. She's watched net zero policies succeed, fail, and collapse in real time. So I asked her what Oregon lawmakers failed to understand.
It goes back to the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris agreements. They look at territorial production emissions. And this is the wrong measure. If we really want to decarbonize, we have to look at consumption emissions. We have to look at what are the emissions caused through our consumption, not what are the emissions that we happen to cause from the stuff that we make in our territory. Because what you make in your territory, well, Britain could meet its climate commitments by closing every single factory, completely shutting down our domestic manufacturing. This will be of no benefit to the climate. It will make climate worse because obviously then your emissions from shipping and all the rest of it. And obviously it's going to have a massive adverse impact on the economy. It's not a good thing to shut all of your manufacturing down. No. And so it's because you're chasing the wrong target that this is happening. But it's not just the UK that looks at it in these terms. Everybody looks at it in these terms. Your policy will drive deindustrialization, it will drive higher energy costs, and it will drive lower energy security, and actually will potentially not result in any overall benefit.
And when people suggest batteries can fill the gap, Catherine was clear.
There's some in development, some new battery chemistries that might last for maybe 3 days. But again, it's nowhere near enough. 3 days is a big advancement on 3 hours, but what you need is like 6 months. Yeah. And actually, ideally, you need years worth because you might have a dry, low wind. Yeah, this is what's happening in Europe this year. It's been very dry and it's been not windy. So you've seen significant reductions in both wind and hydro generation across Europe. And that's forced a big increase in gas burn for power generation. Now, if you wanted to get rid of the gas, you really would need to have multi-year energy storage. And right now, the only multi-year energy storage that's available is fossil fuels.
Weeks and months, not hours. Catherine has watched countries across Europe go down this path. And she warned us, Oregon is repeating the same mistakes.
People say, oh, wind and sun are free, and therefore wind and solar energy are cheap, right? So yes, that's true. Wind and solar energy are cheap, but the machines that you need to turn that energy into electricity, they're not cheap. They're quite expensive. And so the wind turbines that you build, they're expensive. They're also not very environmentally friendly. You need a lot of steel and concrete. And for wind, you need rare earth magnets, which are pretty much only made at scale in China. The reason they're only made at scale in China is partly because the Chinese have tried to corner the market. So there's anti-competitive practices from the Chinese, but also because it's an incredibly polluting process. And China is the only country in the world that allows that sort of environmental damage in manufacturing, basically. So you create a huge amount of toxic waste when you try and produce rare earth magnets and nobody else permits it. And obviously to try and do it in a clean way is really expensive. So the Chinese ones are way cheaper than you would be able to achieve elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So you've got all this dirty stuff that you need to do to build your wind turbines. And that's before you talk about killing birds and stuff. But the actual turbines themselves, there's quite a lot of environmental harm that goes into producing them. And they're very expensive. They cost a lot of money, which is why pretty much everywhere they require subsidies.
It's not like the hydropower. Like a dam is over 100 years typically.
Yeah, I mean, so wind turbines, they actually would last probably 25 to 30 years, but they tend to stop being economic after about 15 years and get repowered. You're right, hydro dams are extremely expensive to build. They have really high capital costs, but once you've built them, they last a really long time.
Europe moved faster than its infrastructure could handle, and the result was price spikes, shortages, and real reliability risk. In short, Oregon passed a law the grid cannot physically execute, and we should expect the same results. Congresswoman Maxine Dexter is one of House Bill 2021's regular sponsors, as I mentioned before. She was gracious enough to interview with us, something not every legislator chose to do. I respect that she showed up, and we do agree on something important.
People can't afford the basic cost of living right now. Yeah. And energy cost is having a significant impact, and 50% increases in some places is extraordinary. And our job in government is to make sure that when people can't do the things that they need to do, or local governments can't do the things that they need to do, that our job's to step in.
She's right. Oregonians are being squeezed. Where we differ is on why this is happening and how policymakers expect families to absorb the costs.
I think it's still in the process of even just getting implementation sort of frameworks together, is my understanding. And of course, I haven't been there for a bit, but the impact in the longer term is sustainable, more resilient energy sources for the people of Oregon. 100% of, my awareness in natural resources here in DC is that there's a real push for fossil fuel and coal-based fuel sources. And I think in Oregon, we had some pretty clear data and advocacy around moving away from that even from an investment perspective. And it, seems like it has a short half-life for the renewable, sustainable sort of sector of our communities. And so it was, without question, in the interest of long-term sustainability, affordability in the longer term, not immediate. Obviously, there's upfront resources, and then, frankly, just protecting environment for, hopefully the duration.
Yeah, for next generations. Do you acknowledge that it's increased our energy costs in Oregon, that bill?
To what extent it's directly related versus the lack of investments, this is a complicated, I think it's hard to draw a straight line. There's clearly investments that are being needed for transformer upgrades and resilience in our, just basic infrastructure. And then absolutely, there are investments being made to convert to renewables. And as you know, if you've got a windmill in the middle of nowhere, if there's no way to get that energy to the people, like that does take investments.
Congresswoman Dexter sees net zero as a long-term investment, expensive today, affordable later. But every utility forecast and every engineer we interviewed said the same thing. The costs don't go down, they go up significantly. And then there's her solution for affordability during the transition.
And so I think the Inflation Reduction Act and a lot of the tax credits and subsidies that were being used are critical to maintaining that affordability and sustainability for Oregonians.
This is where Congresswoman Dexter and my perspectives split significantly. Most people who have sent me their bills at PDX-RIL have told me that they don't qualify for subsidies. Many of them have applied. And even for those who do, a permanent government assistance system is always more expensive than simply keeping electricity affordable for everyone in the first place. Congresswoman Dexter is right about one more thing. This is complicated. But complicated doesn't mean we ignore the trajectory. And that trajectory is why we turn to someone who has studied Oregon's energy system for more than 40 years. Meet John Charles. He's watched Oregon's energy system evolve and unravel for decades.
The grid is a very complicated and miraculous thing, and our state legislators are deliberately, knowingly, making it less reliable, moving us closer to a catastrophic failure.
To replace firm power with renewables, you have to build two systems, one that works when weather cooperates and one that works when it doesn't. Oregonians are paying for both. And that's what this net zero law attempts. It assumes the future invention of a non-emitting, dispatchable resource that doesn't exist today, but is required to make the policy work.
All of us who rely on electricity, we don't want to go back to the 18th century. And if we had a blackout right now, and the lights stopped and the camera stopped, and the entire economy came to a stop in Oregon, people would be demanding, we want it back now. Right now, we want to charge our phones. Where's the internet? Where's the phone service? It'd be complete pandemonium.
Right.
Why are we deliberately moving towards that? And we are, by design, by state policy, by progressives.
Utilities know that. Legislators should know that if they're voting on it. And many are already counting on political escape hatches. John Charles.
I don't know when, but I'm sure between now and 2030, which is the first big deadline of compliance with the decarbonization law, there will be a policy change. They'll create some kind of off-ramp, as they like to say in politics, a waiver, a escape patch, whatever. There will be no tolerance among ratepayers for that because it'll be all cost, no benefit.
Yeah.
As you're sitting here and then the lights are on, et cetera, You-
I don't want to pay 3 times or 4 times
Right.
more.
All we want as consumers is we want reliable, affordable electricity. And when the day comes where this prices just keep skyrocketing and the system becomes less reliable, there will be a political reckoning.
Yeah.
Some people will probably be voted out of office.
In other words, the plan is to delay, postpone, and hope no one notices the gap between what was promised and what is physically possible. But Oregonians are noticing, and they're paying for it every single month. One of the strongest arguments for Oregon's mandate is climate impact. So we asked, what happens to global emissions if Oregon hits net zero? Oregon is 0.14% of global emissions. We are raising rates, restricting energy supply, and risking reliability for no measurable climate impact. Not a modest impact, zero. So it doesn't lower global temperatures, and it doesn't stabilize the grid, and it doesn't reduce your utility bills. Who's it helping? Because it's not helping the families emailing me their bills every week. We asked both Catherine Porter and John Charles the same question. What's the path forward? Here's what they said. Re-legalize nuclear energy. Allow modern natural gas plants. Stop banning energy resources that actually work. Build reliability first and let policy follow physics, not fantasy. This isn't extreme, it's common sense. Oregon deserves energy that works, energy that is affordable, energy that is reliable every hour, every day. The kind of energy policy every advanced society depend on. We'll be releasing all 3 of these full interviews soon for those who want to go deeper. It is absolutely critical that Oregonians understand this. Oregon's net zero mandate must be addressed urgently, or affordability and reliable electricity will continue to deteriorate. Here's what you can do. Share this message. Write your legislators. Tell them you're concerned about the trajectory Oregon is on and that the net zero policy, House Bill 2021, must be revisited before the damage becomes irreversible. And if viewers want to learn more about what net zero costs in the Northwest, I strongly recommend the Discovery Institute's documentary, What Will It Cost? It's on YouTube, links in our caption. This is your state, this is your grid, and your voice matters more than ever.